Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2025 Chou Wen-chung Distinguished Lecture on Chinese Culture. My name is Lei Liang. I'm the Executive Director of the 21st Century China Center. So this is our third year holding this lecture series. We started in 2022. We started this lecture series. It's one of the 4 named lectures by the center. And this particular lecture, we focus on the Chinese culture and art. And our hope is that this will broaden the horizons, our horizons about the Chinese culture, and also to bring very innovative understandings to the Chinese culture, promoting mutual understanding. So for that, I'm very grateful to Professor Lei from the music department, who has put so much energy into organizing this lecture series. And he will be our host tonight. I'm going to have him to say a bit more about the person whom we named this lecture after, and also to introduce the speaker. But I want to especially thank one couple tonight for supporting this event, and that is Cai Li and Daniel Chang, who temporarily exited the room. Mr. Daniel Chang and Cai Li, they are great entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, had a huge success with their companies in San Diego, and who founded the Hai Li Foundation after their semi-retirement from the business. And that has given us a lot of support, both materially as well as spiritually, encouraging us to pursue this particular lecture series. And because of their support, we actually today will add a special session in Mandarin Chinese right after this and after the intermission. So with that welcome, I would like just to hand the mic to my colleague, Mr. Lei Liang, who will introduce tonight's speaker and also the program. Lei.
Thanks so much, Wang Lei. So this is really very unusual for us because when we have this lecture series at this beautiful mansion at Cai Li and Daniel's home, we could hardly hold the space for all the people who want to be part of it. Always more than 100 people want to register, and we can only offer 60 seats. So today is very special. We can just enjoy this incredible space at Qualcomm Institute, and honoring a very special person, Professor Chou Wen-chung. He, together with the great architect I.M. Pei and the great painter Zhao Wou-ki, Wou-ki Zhao, they were known as the 3 treasures from Asia, as the greatest artists. And Professor Chou was a dean at Columbia University and the chair of the composition program there for many years, and really responsible for transforming American music because of his leadership and teaching, mentorship, and of course his music. And he's also a very, very important cultural ambassador. So we're really honored to be able to start this series, bringing, we start with the Ming Dynasty scholar, Joseph Lam, first, and then the great woman from our own community here. And then also we had the great Guqin master, Bao Yong, to come. So today's number 4. I'm going to introduce our speaker after I play a prelude to today's program. So it was here at Qualcomm Institute. I see our Qualcomm Institute director, Ramesh Rao. This is really a very, very special place on campus that encourage a place where there's no boundaries between different disciplines. We can work together, create together, and challenge ourselves together. And I really do not know places like that where I can create work together with engineers, for example. So I will play you a very short piece, and it's very important for today's topic because the piece is about a great Chinese painter, Huang Binhong. And this is not a lecture about my piece, but I'll give you three pointers when you enjoy this for 8 minutes. So the first one is Huang Binhong painted this in 1953 when he was nearly blind. Just think about that when you watch this. He was 87 years old. The second pointer is that together with my colleague here at this institute, Professor Foco Cuester of Engineering Department, we did high-resolution imaging. The feature size of the image is 6 UN, which is 1/10 of the width of a human hair. So what you see is an album leaf, but because of the high resolution, you realize that every micro image is a landscape painting in itself. That's something we have never seen before until the technology enables us to see. And the third thing I'll say is something that I did, which is to use the X-ray fluorescence analysis of the painting so we can see what material was used to paint this masterpiece, and then convert that into a sonic filter. So you can actually hear what the materials on the painting, what the pigments sound like. So I will play this as a little prelude to welcome Professor Hong Zaixin, our speaker. Okay, thank you. Well, just think about what you have seen. It's kind of like, I think of Huang Binhong as the Beethoven of painting, somebody who was able to make this magical painting when he couldn't see, very much like Beethoven composed when he was deaf. So today we're very lucky to have one of the world's leading scholars on Huang Binhong with us, Professor Hong Zai-xin, our distinguished guest. He's a specialist on paintings between the 10th to the 14th century and the 20th century China. He has a important award-winning textbook on a history of Chinese art that has been printed several times. Professor Hong Zai-xin now teaches at University of Puget Sound, so we're really grateful that he joins us all the way coming here. Among his many accomplishments, Professor Hong was a fellow of the American Council of Learned Societies and the National Endowment for the Humanities. He also teaches at the China National Academy of Fine Arts and was a senior fellow at the Center for Study of World Religion at Harvard University. I know he has many publications. One of them was last year when you published a 2-volume, very weighty volume on Huang Binhong. I hope you can share some of your most recent research with us. So let's welcome Professor Hong to the podium.
Good afternoon, good evening. Dear Professor Liang, Director Guang, Professor Shen, and distinguished guests, I wanted to thank Director Guang and Professor Liang for the kind invitation. It's truly an honor for me to present the Chou Wen-chung Distinguished Lecture on Chinese Culture at the UCSD. I thank Professor Liang's kind introduction. Your amazing composition with the film on Huang Binhong reminds me of what happened here in this great institution 10 years ago. How you and your remarkable team presented listening landscapes celebrating the soundscape of music and Chinese art in an unprecedented way. What did this interdisciplinary innovation come from? As shown in Professor Liang's composition and the music in the film, we know that Huang Binhong is an influential intellectual giant in the global art history. Using Huang's self-identity almost a century ago, he considered himself as the leading master of modern Chinese art. It was the dream of Professor Liang, using his sonic brush to unveil a modern soundscape of music and Chinese art of painting with calligraphic brush strokes. That is absolutely a revelation in the history of world art and music. Such an interdisciplinary experimentation motivated me to put Professor Liang's sonic painting in a broader context of art and music of human civilizations, Chinese in particular, from Confucius to the age of AI and of Anthropocene. Now at the UCSD, I'm given an opportunity to examine the soundscape making as a hallmark of Chinese civilization in this context. In this presentation, I will briefly show how Professor Liang's sonic painting is internally connected to Professor Chou Wen-chung's calligraphy music. In his 92 years long life, Chou Wen-chung triumphantly revived the Chinese cultural heritage by remerging it with modern ideas. His accomplishments inspired new generations of musicians like Professor Liang to opening a new horizon of innovations for the future. From a perspective of art history, calligraphy in particular, I will focus on 3 aspects of Chinese Wenren, or literary, namely their mentality, lifestyle, and human spirit that Zhou cherished. Let's begin with the mentality of Wenren. It is what calligraphy music of Chou Wen-chung is all about. In 1996, Zhou composed his first string quartet, Clouds, referring to the quality shared between cloud formations and calligraphy through a continual process of change. In Chinese, calligraphy as images of the mind, which read as Shu Ru Xing Hua, was defined by Yang Xiong, the 1st century Confucian scholar. Whose mind? The Chinese Wenren. It was Chou Wen-chung who recommended Running Waters performed by Guan Pinghu to NASA to be included in the Voyage Golden Records. It runs 7 minutes 37 seconds, the longest piece of music from Earth, indicating that guqin, or zither, a string instrument, represents the highest accomplishment of traditional Chinese Wenren music, quite identical to the cursive script in Chinese calligraphy. In a seal of Zhou, I love running waters, 我爱流水, he expressed his passion for guqin, particularly this ancient tune, now hovering in outer space since 1977. Wang Xizhi, the 4th century sage of calligraphy in China, showed the typical mentality of Chinese Wenren through his masterpiece, A Preface to Orchard Pavilion Gathering. Equally amazing as Guqin piece, Running Waters, traveling into outer space, an Italian astronaut, shared via Twitter from the space station when it flew over Professor Liang's hometown, Beijing, on October 12, 2022, expressing the general human feelings. Quote, our eyes explored freely and our hearing raised unbridled. This was the utmost enjoyment for our senses of sights and sounds, unquote. Such images of the mind were celebrated on a cosmological scale. Whoa. Here is the core of the soundscape derived from human perception in 视听, or sight and sound. Taking a close look, we see that the historical forms of the character are ear and the ting, hearing. The latter has the ear as a radical on the left. Originally, you can see the ear, you can see the ear with the 2 mouths. Create ideogrammic component to listen. Now, you see, it's a very interesting soundscape. We can see more tangible perceptions of the character ear. On the right, for example, you see the ear, is another touring Confucian calligrapher Yan Zhenqing's letter written in a semi-cursive style. As a high-ranking official of the Tang court, Yan was overjoyed upon hearing the news of the surrender of a general after the second rebellion since the year of 755. Here, he expressed a powerful emotion, both personal and national. Apparently, the character ear has the meaning of sound as exclamation mark. That is the powerful expression. Now, let me show you the brushwork. So you can see, very interesting, the case. On the left is one of his regular script in central brush. This is the central brush, and then the side brush. That's the different kind of features of Chinese calligraphy and the painting. And I'm reminded of the diatonicism and chromaticism in the classical music. No time for me to elaborate, but just to give you a hint. Yan once studied brushwork with Zhang Xu, known as the crazy cursive Taoist calligraphy genius. His work here is full of side brush strokes to express free wills. You see the one? Sha, sha, sha. All the side brush, the one. And it is from such a unique cultural heritage that Chou Wen-chung composed the cursive, actually 飞草, you can see here, or crazy cursive in his own calligraphy writing, for flute and piano in 1946 with its distinctive individuality and universal soundscape. 40 years later, in 2004, Professor Liang composed the brush strokes to amplify that soundscape in a chamber orchestra. Now, we may wonder where we can trace the mentality of Wenren in children's education since Confucius. It helps us to see a liberal arts root in 6yi, or 6 arts, namely rites, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and mathematics in the Zhou dynasty. For the faculty club of the University of Puget Sound, a liberal art college where I have been working for quarter a century, I made a calligraphy piece of it in seal script. I observed that in my East Asian calligraphy class, students are more appreciative of the soundscape of music and calligraphy with the foundation on mathematics. In the contemporary experimentation of calligraphy in my alma mater, China Art Academy in Hangzhou, its features was defined as shu fei shu, or writing non-writing in its English rendition, with a focus on writing as a performance. The various aspects of shu underscore why it becomes the identity of being a wenren, or 一介书生, an independent scholar. Deeply rooted in a liberal arts education, Chinese wenren had their shared inquiry over the millennium to make their lifestyle as an embodiment of human spirit. We can see how the soundscape of music and calligraphy evolved in the recorded history in China. Chinese music, especially in the history of Guqing, went through millennia to have first comprehensive history by Zhu Changwen in the 11th century. He also was the author of the first comprehensive history of calligraphy. Zhu Changwen demonstrated a shared inquiry of both Guqing and calligraphy as the outcome of a renaissance of Chinese culture of the Song dynasty. I just published a selection of the study of Song painting and calligraphy for a series called Knowing Song Dynasty. So that is a typical period of the Chinese Renaissance. In both of his books, he valued a man of letters, Ouyang highly. Ouyang, as most of Chinese friends know, was famous for his regular script in calligraphy, and some of his works survived in the inscriptions to his collection of ancient calligraphy works, Ji Gu Lu. In addition to his famous essay, Ode to the Sound of Autumn, Qiu Sen Fu, Ouyang was known for his 8 elegant pastimes, namely Guqing, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, wine, tea, and flower. The first 4 items, Qing Qi Shu Hua, became the popular theme of painting in East Asia to depict lifestyle of wenren. After Zhu passed away in Suzhou in 1098, guess who was asked to write his epitaph? It was Mi Fu. In the epitaph, Zhu was highly praised for his contribution to writing the history of Guqing. Mi had a poem about Guqing, showing how versatile he was in music, calligraphy, and painting. He was most likely to be responsible for compiling 2 official catalogs of painting and calligraphy in the collection of Emperor Huizong. Seen here in this hanging scroll titled Tingqing Tu, or Listening to Guqing, now in the collection of the Palace Museum in Beijing. Emperor Huizong appointed Mi Fu as the doctor of calligraphy, or 书学博士, first in its kind in the world history. Now we have many 书学博士. He was the first. The painting was attributed to the emperor with his famous slender gold inscription and signature, 受精体. His prime minister, Cai Jing, wrote a poem in his semi-cursive style, shedding some lights on the history of Guqing. In the beginning, the poet told a story of the most famous Guqing made by Cai Yong, a man of letters of the 2nd century. A piece of scorched timber paulownia was discovered for making the soundboard of that stringed instrument, music instrument, with the great quality of sound. It alluded to the art of guqin playing of Emperor Huizong as the best musician in the world. The calligrapher's depiction sounds like how Albert Einstein was deeply moved by Yashedi Menuhin's superior violin performance in an awe-strike moment. Whoa, God does exist. Then, after depicting the physical presence of the setting and the listeners in the second and third lines, the poet made an unexpected leap in the final line to the 5th century poet and musician Tao Yuanming, who made a stringless guqin for self-entertainment. With the magic plunk of the strings, or no string, by running waters, by the master, as we see in the masterful technique of Guanpinghu playing the running waters, the readers can be transported to listen to John Cage's 4 minute 33 second. We can see one more landscape painting with a similar imagery of Zhu Derun, a well-known Wenren artist of the Yuan dynasty under the Mongols. Its title is Playing Guqin in the Pine Forest, with Zhu's signature, along with a long poem with Zhu's signature. In the cursive script by another contemporary Wenren, the painter retired at home for 3 decades after his public service at the court. Iconography-wise, Zhu's soundscape of Wenren playing guqin under the pine trees were not in the court, but in nature. The tenacious Chinese Wenren, withstanding all storms, represented the spirit of Wenren, for which Chou Wen-chung composed Eternal Pines in 2008 to carry out his ideal. The mentality, lifestyle, and human spirit of Wenren in the Chinese cultural heritage faced great challenges in modern era. So was the soundscape of music and calligraphy. Now we can take a look at its dramatic development in the process of modernization. When China Art Academy was established in Hangzhou in 1928, something interesting occurred. Calligraphy was excluded from the curriculum because it didn't fit in the Western concept of fine arts as plastic art. Not to mention guqin, but Western music was added. Here came the situation that mobilized Chou Wen-chung to make a difference in musical world. Zhou made a historical retrospection on what he accomplished. Quote, "In terms of what someone like me should do, I feel my job is to, as much as I could as a modern person, to look back at the Chinese heritage and really ask the question, does it deserve to continue? My ancestors give it up by the end of the 19th century. My responsibility is to build my ideas, my career, my products on the basis of how to revive the Chinese heritage in the view of the time lag to merge with modern ideas," unquote. On the left, we see Pan Tianshou, the Chinese painting professor who couldn't offer courses like calligraphy and seal engraving until 3 decades later. His experience alluded to the necessary tension that we observe in the journey of his student Zhao Wuji, later become the renowned Chinese-French artist. He rejected copying an ancient model of Pan's Chinese painting class for the Chinese painting class, which almost cost his expulsion from the school. Miraculously, similar to how Chou Wen-chung went to New York in the late 1940s, when the modern movement was in its heyday. Zhao left Hangzhou for Paris around the same time to pursue his modernist career, beginning with the oracle-bone script in the early 1950s. Zhao kept his grandfather's advice in mind that Chinese calligraphy was the most precious cultural heritage. Zhao's experimentation was immediately appreciated by the Belgian poet and artist Henri Michel in his passion for ideogram of Chinese written system. Zhao paid homage to Michel in his calligraphic expressive style like music in 1999. Zhao is revered as the three giants or overseas Chinese artists of modern era, along with I.M. Pei, whose architectural design of Suzhou Museum conveys the true spirit of Chinese Wenren, and Chou Wen-chung. When Zhao Wou-ki further pursued the expressive quality of his oil painting to embrace the rise of globalization, Chou Wen-chung had been experimenting in calligraphy music through cursive in 1964 as part of the contemporary music movement in the world. Since the later 1950s, the relationship between Communist China and Soviet Union was worsening. The once dominant Russian realistic style embodied in the Chischakov drawing method in China's higher art educational system was challenged by Pan Tianshou. When Pan became the president of the Art Academy for the second time, he promoted the program of calligraphy and seal engraving as an area of national pride. The first graduate program of calligraphy was established in Hangzhou in 1979. In Paris, almost the same time, Huang Binhong, whose PhD thesis was on Zhang Xu and crazy cursive, had his book on system of Chinese calligraphy theory, very famous one, published in 1985, inspired the new generations to seek for its universality. Trained as an engineer with his specialty in cursive script, Qiu Zhenzong was one of the 4 students in the graduate program at my alma mater in 1979. I was a student in 1982. In his first book, on the form of calligraphy and its interpretation, he defined calligraphy as the art of line. As mentioned above, in 2004, Professor Liang composed a chamber orchestra piece, Brush Strokes. 10 years later, Professor Liang composed Inkscape for percussion quartet and piano. When he paid his first visit to Professor Chou Wen-chung in New York in 2006, Zhou raised a beautiful question for him. What is a line? What is a line is not a line? Or when is a line not a line? Great question. Professor Liang observed how serious the question is for musicians and for everyone. Especially, it deconstructs the constitution of the universe of oneness of brushstroke, 一画论, as Shi Tao, a 17th century Chinese painter, conceived in his painting theory and presented in his calligraphic painting. It also becomes the counterpoint of the art of line from what beneath the surface of the soundscape we perceived in crazy cursive script. In general, it destructs the existing heritage in order to look forward to a new world scene of art and music that Professor Liang embodies. And with the emphasis on dots that connect the line, you saw the movie, you saw the video, you saw so many dots that connect the lines. Huang Binhong demonstrated his brushworks like a Taiji symbol and contain both yin and yang. It is amazing to see how Huang conceived elements of Chinese ink painting into 5 brush strokes namely the evenly moved brush, the heavily drawn brush, the rounded brush, the reserved brush, which means the ink that had that reserved, called overnight ink. And then the changing brush. The last one is a very, very important one. Later on, Chou Wen-chung reached the similar viewpoint from music, the rhythm, from the rhythm to change, yun to bian, through his calligraphy music composition. Let's see how the calligraphy world responded to the change first, focusing on the cursive script creation first. We see what Wang Dongling has done in that continuous process of change. Wang was the classmate of Qiu Zhenzong back to 1979. In 2003, he created a huge piece of Zhuangzi's Wandering on the Way in cursive script. That is what occurred in the case of Wang Dongying at the age of 76. He restarted again with his chaotic calligraphy after 60 years practice, especially in cursive script. What do we see? The doll that can be told is not the true doll. That's perhaps the text, but it doesn't matter. What about the musical world in the new millennium? Professor Lei Liang's trance for the solo percussion and audience is a great example. We don't have time to show, but you can think about that kind of new innovation. At the same time, Professor Liang and his team made electronic music listening landscape. We just listened and watched, and song listening eyescapes. And his award-winning work, 1,000 Mountains, 1,000,000 Streams, among hundreds of other music pieces, make the new contributions to opening endless possibilities to cherish the soundscape of music and calligraphy in Chinese culture and beyond. In about half an hour later, in my Chinese lecture, I will explore the shared vision of the same hallmark of Chinese civilization by Huang Binhong and Tianshou, whom I briefly mentioned above, in their art world, and Professor Liang in his soundscape in the age of AI and the Anthropocene with everlasting significance. Thank you.
You stay here. Maybe I can invite you to.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to invite you to sit in the middle.
Okay.
At this moment, we actually have another speaker. We're going to welcome one of the most respected and beloved member of this campus, Professor Kuiyi Shen, from the Vis Art Department. He's the vice chair of the Vis Art Department and the authority on Japanese and Chinese painting. And can we please welcome Professor Shen to the stage?
Oh, thank you, Liang.
Here, you want to
Let me
sit
just
down
sit
already?
here. Yeah, okay, I come. Yeah, you go. Good. Yeah, thank you, Liang Lei and Guang Lei, and both Liang, and also Professor Hong. And so, what a wonderful lecture! It's amazing because the lecture is so rich, covered so many things. So here I just highlighted a few points here, and I write something down, so I just read it. In this lecture, Professor Hong Zhaixing explored the relationship between Chinese calligraphy and music and the visual arts, with a particular focus on the works of Chou Wen-chung and also Liang Lei. It delves into the uniqueness of the calligraphy as artistic form of expression, especially its dynamic nature and its connections to sound and music. By analyzing the rhythm and the cadence and also force within the ink calligraphy, Professor Hong revealed how calligraphy transcended the visual arts to become a particular rich in auditory characteristic. Additionally, in this lecture, we heard Professor Hong Zhaixing discuss the concept of writing, non-writing. This is very interesting, the topic for a conference in Hangzhou a couple of years ago. Emphasized that calligraphy is not merely a form of writing, but a highly expressive and also creative activity. The lines and also brushstrokes especially, the structure of the calligraphy are viewed as a kind of the soundscape, resonating with the temporal and the spatial aspects of the music. Inspired by this concept, the music works of Chou Wen-chung and Liang Lei attempted to capture the fluidity and also expressiveness of the calligraphy in sound. Professor Hong also addressed the challenge faced by the traditional Chinese art forms in the modern era, and how the artists like the Zhou and Liang and also others have reimagined them for a globalized world. Figures like the Chou Wen-chung and Liang Lei demonstrated the tradition is not this kind of static, but adaptable, capable of embracing innovation while preserving its core essence. As the technology reshapes the artistic practice, the challenge for the future will be maintain the integrity of these interdisciplinary traditions while exploring the new creative kind of frontiers. In the lecture, we also see the Professor Hong explore the philosophical ideas with the Chinese literary art, such as the influence of the Confucianism and the Taoism, their thoughts on the artistic creation. Traditional Chinese art emphasizes the harmony between the humans and the nature, a concept reflected in the improvisational nature of the both calligraphy and music, as well as their interesting the rhythmic expressions. Through his interdisciplinary studies, we got to know how calligraphy is now not only a visual art form, but also an art with sound with a profound cultural significance. I think I just stopped here. There are too many things to say, but thank you. Thank you again, Professor Hong.
This is a moment for us to have some questions from the audience. There are microphones on the side if you'd like to ask Professor Hong or Professor Shen any questions. This will be a good moment. We're preparing already for next year's lecture, if I just fill in a little bit at this moment if you're thinking of your question. So this is the fourth time that we did Chou Wen-chung lecture, and next year's theme we have already decided with Gary Poon, a Protostar group, that it's going to be called The Forgotten Chinatown. In fact, we will invite three very special people, an activist in Chinatown in San Francisco, somebody who embodies Chinatown, David Lei, and a musicologist, Nancy Rao of Rutgers University, who has published an award-winning book about how important Chinatown is for American music. Because a lot of the most important experiments done by John Cage, Lou Harrison, all these people have not been acknowledged, but their close connection with Chinatown as this hub of free thinking and experimentation. So this is another way that we need to give credit to the Chinese community and Chinatown and its very vital role in introducing all kind of dialogues and creativity. And also we will have a legal scholar who will come to talk about the importance of the 14th Amendment, birthright movement that also started in Chinatown, in San Francisco, that changed all of our lives. So we're already in the planning stage for next year's series. Okay, is that enough time for you to think of a question? By the way, I also highly recommend you stay for the Chinese portion of this talk starting at 5:30. We have this salon at Cai Li and Daniel's beautiful house that we insist on discussing all of these matters in Chinese. because it's so important to keep Chinese language as a vital medium for thinking and questioning and probing important issues together. So, in fact, I don't think you will hear the same lecture at all. Professor Hong will give a very, very different lecture in the second half. And if you don't understand Chinese, it's totally okay, because I think you will just enjoy the music of Chinese language. If you just hear Professor Hong's talking, you will get a lot of interesting ideas already. Okay, any questions? Yes, please, Guanglei. Do you want to speak into the microphone, please?
I have a very layman's question. That is, if you listen to the lecture, right, I get the sense that a lot of musicians can be inspired by calligraphers. In the history of calligraphy, are there visual artists who have been inspired by music and created things that match with the sense of the sound?
I think this is a great question. If you, I have a book here. I discussed this book. It's a very old book, the first English book on Chinese music called The Art of Chinese Music. And I found it's really interesting the way the person grew up from China and stayed for 28 years. He began with the music of Chinese language. So you can see Chinese called monosyllable sound. So monosyllable sound, you have only 480 monosyllable sound, but you have to carry on 50,000 characters or more. So how do we do that? Like my family name Hong, and then you have Hong, 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 Hong. And then each Hong, even just this one, has so many characters. How do you do that? And then when you pronounce that, you have this musical tone. So that is the way that this book, already noticed. But the truth is, when they wrote that, my mentor is Huang Binhong's student. And his dialect is from Wenling, very, very heavy dialect. Yeah. His lecture to the foreign student, I have to translate from the Wenling to the Mandarin, then from Mandarin to English. That's true, However, when he read his poem, so musical, just so musical, that is the one that he was a poet. He was a painter. He was a calligrapher. So you really see the way Huang Binhong wrote quite a few things in my next lecture about his understanding or his appreciation or his kind of insight on the music. So insightful. We just shared it with Professor Liang. And it was amazing. If you listen to his dialect, perhaps you have an issue. Yeah, if you listen to his kind of rhythm, wow, so beautiful. That's the way when they do their visual demonstration. So I think it's innate. It's not the way now I combine music to my work. It's in your body. So calligrapher has a great kind of statement in the Taoist text called 阴符经, that means 宇宙在乎手. The universe in my hand, actually in my brush. 万物生乎身. That's 10,000 things just came from my body. So I'm the embodiment of universe with the sound, with the image, with the meaning. So that is the power of, we have this theme called Chou Wen-chung lecture on Chinese culture. And I think that's the core. I think this is truly, amazing. And I'm deeply grateful that Professor Liang is such an kind of, the person who knows the heart of Huang Binhong. If Huang Binhong is still alive or in heaven, he will be extremely happy. Yeah, because that is the one that his art got a new interpretation, new understanding, truly opened a new dimension. I have never had that kind of possibility, unless we are in this institution with this imagination. So.
It's a great answer. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, Dongling, that was such a wonderful question. I think that, I don't know whether it's true for some of you, but I noticed that a lot of great art has a musicality to it. If I see beautiful paintings, or even if I read novel, I can tell that it has a flow. Murakami, one of my favorite Japanese writers, I noticed there is a particular flow with his writing, and then I learned that he's actually a huge fan of jazz. And you almost can feel the jazz rhythm in his writing. And I was talking to his translator, Professor Rubin at Harvard, about this particular quality. And in fact, I push a little further. I think that if a piece of art, like painting, for example, or ceramics, or anything you can think of, if it doesn't have music in it, it's not truly a great piece of art. It has to reach the level of music if it is really superior. Yeah, a lot of art doesn't inspire me to hear music. I think it's just simply not good enough. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Raise hand. Please, yeah. We can even pass a microphone to you.
Oh, thank you. I really like how you have shown us the no boundaries between disciplines. I really believe in that for myself. I'm a performance poet. So this is a little bit of a leap. There is a British explosion of rock music in our country from one band, Led Zeppelin. And in rock and roll or in jazz, the drummer is always in harmony with the bass player. But John Bonham of Led Zeppelin, he was in harmony with the lead guitarist. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, no boundaries between instruments. And I'm wondering if, in your example from Chinese history, is there a similar parallel with what they modeled? Thank you for taking my question.
Thank you. I do not know the musical world well, but I do have a close colleague who is an expert of the history of zither. And he told me some stories. Then he said the way that how he worked with the calligraphers, and the way that he gathered that it is about a family tradition. Always, if you are the family from a kind of a zither player or qing player, and the family of the calligraphy writing, and they always can find some connection about the same interest of their, grandfather or their circle. And so I do not have the concrete example to show that cooperation, but my next lecture, we have Sun Mutang and Huang Binhong, a perfect example that you cannot believe that Huang Binhong lived in the Xisha Road, 31, number 31, and then Sun Mutang at 29, and they were neighbors. And Sun Mutang was a diplomat and studied in Germany, and then returned to China, became a very passionate guqin player. And then he always had a kind of close relationship with his painting friend, neighbor. And then in 1952, he bought ancient guqin piece. And he said, that is the water and the clouds, So he asked Huang Binhong to write the title with the seal script and his dates on 1952. And then Sun Mutang just named his studio as Water and Clouds. And then 1957, the year I was born, and he played an ancient piece of that music instrument with a photo. And it's called Gu Men Yuan. It's a complaint of the ancient kind of gate or something. And then the background is Huang Binhong's calligraphic work. It's a couplet there. So you really see kind of thing. And then, more interestingly, that another guqin player from my hometown, which is Yao Binhong, a the school kind of guqin master, he was very curious about Huang Binhong's collection of the guqin, a piece that very famous. And then he said, could I get that from his family? And then Sun Mutang said, I asked. His wife said, Huang Binhong had a will. He will donate all things to the Zhejiang Museum. Sorry, I cannot give that to you. So you really see that kind of what called lifestyle of literature or literaries or wenren is the one that I can imagine. You know, the thing that they had, that harmonious, seamless kind of mutual appreciation, understanding is beyond description. That's what I know.
Thank you so much. So, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure there are many good stories. I guess we'll just take one more question before we head to the reception.
Well, I'm a Chinese old man. And when I grew up, I heard a lot of things we call 诗中有画,画中有诗. Seems that was more prevalent in my life. And but today you opened my eyes talking about the connection between music and the calligraphies. But I still like to see you gentlemen make some comment about make sure our audience to understand the connection between poem and calligraphy, because that for a long time seems the mainstream of the Chinese culture. But I'm pretty sure that Professor Liang introduced the connection between the music and the calligraphy. I said, that's great. But let's not forget that 诗中有画,画中有诗. That's for a long time it's our major culture, the influence. Thank you.
So,
Great.
okay. So this question actually is a kind of old 3 prefectures in the Tang Dynasty. And there is a person from Tiantai, which is my mentor's hometown area, and Zhen Qian. This guy is famous for his poetry, for his painting, and calligraphy. So 诗书画三绝, which means his kind of artistry in 3 kind of profession or 3 branches of, trainings all on the top. And that became a kind of canon. And that became a kind of standard. And most famous one is the one that we see in Wang Wei's poem. And Wang Wei's poem is 行到水穷处,坐看云起时. And you can always see the way that how could that kind of poem, let me translate that. When we walk to the end of the water, we see the rise of the clouds. It's so poetic and Zen-like. It's really a lifting of your mindset and merging yourself into the nature, And then you can see this is the poem. But this became the theme of Chinese painting. Yeah, I have picture there, but I don't have the one here to show you. But it is, in the Song Dynasty and in the book I compiled, So you can see that is the 诗中有画,画中有诗, that you can see this integral or that kind of intertranslatable kind of relationship. And that they are at once is the sound and also the image. So poetry to be more musical is natural because there is the rhythm. Yeah, but the poetry with imagery is also because yesterday we had a great conversation with Professor Sen about the word and image. And what is their relationship? And then you can really see the many aspects. And what you just highlight is the kind of a continuous tradition. And then Professor Liang and, your predecessor, Chou Wen-chung demonstrated from the musical perspective is the one that we really see a revitalization of this kind of glorious tradition. Now we see that in the latest technology. It's just opening up not only the visual part, but also the soundscape. Extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you.